Yard Live Show. We are here to preview week 8 of the NFL season. We are officially at the halfway point coming in, and we're going to preview every single game. We have big news coming up with the trade deadline. DeAndre Hopkins was just traded today to the Kansas City Chiefs, not satisfied with what they have right now, getting Patrick Mahomes some help. And then we are also going to go over just our expectations and a mini recap of what happened this offseason and talking about the games that happened last night because the NBA was off to a fast start and all the headlines are already swirling. So we will definitely have some time to talk about that. But DeAndre Hopkins, I texted you this morning. You woke up this morning. All it said was D Hop to the Chiefs in all lowercase.
And I was stunned. I mean, I wasn't surprised that he got dealt, but for a fifth round pick to the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, how does it get any better than that? This is a guy that's been rotting in Tennessee for the last 2 years. And honestly, even his time in Arizona was a little um, rotting a little bit too. But now he finally gets a legitimate quarterback again. I feel like he's going to fit in pretty well. He's supposed to play on Sunday, but fifth round pick for DeAndre Hopkins, who still has plenty in the tank. That's a massive home run for the Chiefs.
No, it's definitely a massive home run. This is a guy where he's played with some pretty abysmal quarterback play where you look at him, he played his best football with DeAndre Hopkins or with Deshaun Watson. He is DeAndre Hopkins. And then he played with Andre Johnson, Matt Schaub. Couldn't really figure out the quarterback situation. It was the Fitzpatricks. It was the Brock Osweilers of the world. And that awful contract for $72 million. Who thought that was a good idea? Ends up going to Arizona. And Kyler, like right now, showing he's not the best quarterback in the world by any means. But he had some good years there. Now he's kind of just disappeared in Tennessee. Offense there doesn't really know what they're doing. Maybe he lost the step a little bit, but I think when he's playing with a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, they don't need DeAndre Hopkins to be his prime self. They just need him to be a really nice number two on that team and step up. And the Chiefs have shown they can make it work with a ragtag bunch of wide receivers. And he's probably the best receiver outside of Rashee Rice that they've had since Tyreek Hill on that team when you're dealing with some absolute no names, and it feels like the Patriots where you have like McCole Hardman, Juju is back. We're recycling through the old same fourth option mediocre receivers now. Now you have someone legit like D Hop, and I feel like you go out and get him because it does look like Kelsey has lost a step. So you need someone else who's a veteran, who's hungry for a ring. And with him and Patrick Mahomes, some of the catches that D Hop can still make, like those passes are still going to be electric. So I think this is definitely going to help out D Hop resurrect his career a little bit and then probably retire if he wins a ring after this. And then Mahomes finally has a legitimate target now.
Yeah, it's huge. And it sucks with DeAndre Hopkins. Like we had that 1 year with the Cardinals where they were really good. He had a really solid year, but the problem he's been banged up a lot and he's been playing on a lot of losing teams. So I think that he still has enough in the tank where he can be formidable for them. I think he'll easily be the number one. And I think we could see 1,000 yards for him still. He hasn't really been on the field too much this year, but even so, you have Will Levis and Mason Rudolph throwing to you. I just feel like you're going to start to see him have a little bit more pep in his step. You'll see him start winning football games. So I'm excited for him. I think we're going to see a resurrection of DeAndre Hopkins. I'm excited to see it.
Hopefully, yeah, he's one of my favorite players to watch here. And, dealing with Will Levis and Ryan Tannehill hasn't been great for him as of late. So hoping he still has something left in the tank here, and he also will stay healthy. But a fifth round pick for him is a steal. Like, why wouldn't the Cowboys go out there and get him? Like, I don't understand why like another team wouldn't want to prevent the Chiefs from getting DeAndre Hopkins if they knew the price was so low for a receiver like him. Even a
Yeah,
team
and the
like
funny,
Atlanta, you want another great receiver?
yeah, hell, even like the Steelers maybe use a second receiver. I know there's a couple other receivers that are on the market, like Cooper Cup, who we could see move by the end of the show potentially. But for D Hop, fifth round pick, plus the Titans are going to eat half of the contract that's left with him. So really, his contract's up after this year, if I'm not mistaken. And then after that, you basically get him for I think $7 million and a fifth round pick. I feel like the Chiefs just kind of heisted it a little bit. I'll look at his contract because I know he signed a deal with the Titans for 2 years. Um, yeah, he's gonna the Chiefs are gonna pay him $3 million for the rest of the season, and then his contract's voided after that. So really, it's just a 7 game rental, and he's probably out after the Super Bowl. So massive play. If the Chiefs make the Super Bowl, it becomes a 4th round pick, and if he plays 60% of the snaps, but huge home run for the Chiefs, huge home run for D Hop, and I think we should see him start to accelerate his game a lot.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes may get him paid again.
Yeah, because he's 32, and if I look at his career, like we're looking at, I can pull up his stats here if you want me to share it here. Got a fun little tool here. Um, so this is his
Stat
stats.
tool.
I mean, we have 1,000 yard seasons, 1,000 yard seasons. He's had 7,000 yard seasons. He's got 12,000 receiving yards, almost 1,000 catches. Like that's a Hall of Famer already. All he needs is another Super Bowl, and he'll be golden. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame eventually.
For sure. Yeah. And I think he's one of the best receivers of his era. And there's like the wide receivers who are all giving their top five the past, I think it was like 2 years ago. And I feel like D Hop was left off of most people's lists, which was really confusing to me because he was, outside of Antonio Brown, the most dominant receiver in the league for a while. It was
Oh
like
yeah,
him, Julio, and AB.
yeah. And now, yeah, he finally gets his guy. So it's excited to see. Now with other guys on the move like Cooper Cup, right now he's linked to the Steelers, the Chargers, and a few other teams. For Cooper Cup, a guy who's been banged up, where do you see him going potentially, or what would be the best fit for him?
Um, I think the best fit for him would be a team like probably the Steelers, because the Steelers can compete now, and I think he looks at the Chargers, and you don't really fully believe in all the pieces there. But if you look at Pittsburgh, Najee's playing really well. Russell Wilson had a really good game, and the defense looks like it's the best Steelers defense in a long time here, holding the Jets to 15 points, going on a 34 unanswered run versus the Jets there. So I think if you look at that, okay, what if I pair myself with George Pickens, with Russell Wilson, and be that next piece for this team? I think then you start to look at the Steelers, which is a matchup where Mike Tomlin has dominated Jim Harbaugh over the past few years, and it's kind of been a Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay type of rivalry where it seems like Mike Tomlin has kind of had John Harbaugh's number over the past few years. The Steelers beat them twice last season, and one of those games was with Kenny Pickett, and the other one was with Mason Rudolph there, and the Ravens got to the conference championship that year. So I think if you want to win, that would probably be the best fit for him because you look at the Chargers, do you really believe you can still compete? So maybe if you're fine not winning a Super Bowl and getting some good numbers with Herbert and not having to move out of LA, but you have in the back of your mind, like, I'm probably not going to win here. Really depends on what he wants to do.
If he wants production, I feel like the Chargers are his best fit. If he wants to win, the Steelers. I think I kind of agree with the Steelers. I think the Steelers, you have someone who's a jump ball, go get him guy, physical receiver like George Pickens, Cooper Cup more in the slot. So I think I'm looking at his contract now. He's got 2 more years on his contract, and he's owed about 30 million each year. So if the Rams want to rebuild and get another receiver, they already have Puka Nakoa who's supposed to come back maybe this week. So I think it's good for the Rams to deal him, and I think a place like the Steelers is a place he could call home and have a successful second leg of his career potentially.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the Steelers would definitely make a lot of sense for him. And if you want to go all in this year, see like who gives you the best shot. I think Russ, Pickens, and then having a legitimate run game. Pat Fryermuth has played really well this season. Actually, I think this is the best season of his career so far. And then just that defense is different this year. So I think you would have a legitimate chance to get to the Super Bowl.
I think so too, especially with how good that defense has been too. It's exciting to see. I hope by the end of the show we hear of him being dealt, but if not, we'll definitely hit on it next episode as well. Now, NFL football, week 8. Here we are.
Week 8.
Thursday night football starts tomorrow. We have Vikings and Rams in LA. We have the Vikings favorited as a field goal, 48 and a half over under. Early sentiment on this game: Vikings just came off a loss to the Lions. Rams coming off a gritty win against the Raiders. Early signs say the Vikings are favorites. How do you feel about this game going on for Thursday night?
Yeah, the Vikings should be favorites in this game. Like, if you look and see how well they competed versus the Lions, gave them that puncher's chance. Like, this is a 5-1 team. They want to keep up with the Lions here. And you look at the Rams, like, you just got in a dogfight with the Raiders. The Raiders of all team that has looked at like one of the most pathetic teams in the league this year, one of the most disappointing teams coming into the year. They're like, okay, we have Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, but we don't have a run game. We have a hard-nosed defensive head coach, but we don't have a good defense. And you're in a dogfight with them after they just traded Devontae Adams. Like, that's not a good sign for me that you're going to go out there and compete with a team like the Minnesota Vikings, where Brian Flores is knocking on the door to be a head coach after this season with how well he's coached that defense. Some people saying that they're one of the best defenses in the league going up against um, the Rams, and people give them flack for that Lions game, but the Lions are just a different offense here. But versus a team like the Rams, Vikings should be able to just eat them up in this game. So I would think that the Vikings go out there and handle business and win comfortably by at least 10 in this game.
I agree. I think the way the Vikings defenses play with Brian Flores, I think you just have way more firepower. Aaron Jones coming off an injury, he looked just fine. Hawkinson might return, probably not in this game, but he's looming coming back, so there's a lot of momentum there. And I think, yeah, like the Lions, it's a tough game to face the Lions, and they're going to have plenty of games like that. But I think just the way the Rams are beat up, the way that Puka Nakua is coming back from an injury potentially, Cooper Cup isn't playing for you right now. I just feel like it's a pretty easy setup for the Vikings to continue rolling. So I would take them winning. I think it'll be a lower scoring game. I'll say like 24-14, but I do think that the Vikings should prevail.
24 to 14. I could see the Vikings still putting up points. Especially on these Thursday night games, they can quickly get out of hand for the opposing team as soon as they know they're going to lose. Kind of just pack it in the second half.
Yeah. Plus, honestly, Stafford hasn't played great this year. I think he's dealing with some injuries himself. He's playing through it, but I just I just don't see a lot of hope for the Rams. The only way I could see the Rams winning this game is if the Vikings come out flat and
Yeah.
Kyron Williams has a big game, but haven't been overly impressed with the Rams defense, and I just think they don't have enough firepower at the end of the day. That comes down to it.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Stafford's dealing with injuries. I can give you two big injuries that he's dealing with for why he's not playing well. That's not himself. It's Puka Nacua and Cooper Cup. Like, what is he supposed to do? He doesn't
He's
have
got
any
Tutu.
help. Yeah, he has Tutu Atwell, and like, okay, that's about it. We don't even have Tyler Higbee anymore. So it's Kyron Williams, and Kyron Williams, sure, he gets a touchdown every game, but like, this isn't like the Todd Gurley, Sean McVay rushing offense. It's just a above average rushing offense. So this isn't a dynamic Rams team, and you don't have Aaron Donald. So like, your defense is good sometimes, but are you consistently stopping people? No.
No. So we both have the Vikings winning this game pretty handily. Let's go to the 1 o'clock slates. No more London games, at least for week 8. Thank the heavens. We don't have to get up at 6:30 in the morning to watch this game, and it's not a bad game. 1 o'clock slate looks pretty solid. We got Eagles and Cincinnati in Cincinnati. Cincinnati is favored at 2.5, over under a 47.5. It's weird for the Bengals. Bengals have won 2 straight. They've had some gritty games. They had the gritty game against the Giants, gritty game against the Browns, and then the Eagles. They had a big win against the Giants of all teams. But it's weird. The Bengals initially their offense was playing really well and their defense was playing poorly, and it's kind of switched. I wouldn't say the Bengals offense is playing poorly, but it has been a little clunky. But their defense is playing great again. So their defense is playing well. If they can mesh where both sides of the ball are playing well, then they're back. Then the Bengals are good and they'll be 4-4 and everything will be fine. But 47.5, I'd probably take the under in this game because Eagles defense has still played well, but I do take the Bengals to win this game. Ja'Marr Chase has a big game. Maybe we see a Trent Irwin sighting if we're lucky. Chase Brown, all those boys. Give me the Bengals.
Yeah, Romanian Rocket in this game, hopefully. Yeah, and with this Bengals team, I think they will mesh and they know what the assignment is. This is a disrespectful bulletin board material spread. I mean, 2.5 points for the Cincinnati Bengals at home when you automatically get 3 points. So you're saying this Philadelphia Eagles team is favored to beat the Bengals? Like, no, this team has showed signs of a team that's falling apart here this season, and with Nick Sirianni getting in fights with fans, and with the Bengals, it's like they've shown enough consistently where they've been to two conference championship games at least have had more than one back-to-back successful year, and they know that they can't fall any further behind in the AFC North, especially looking at the Steelers and the Ravens. So they're playing catch up right now, where with the Eagles, I don't think it's as urgent for them to win this game. So I feel like this will just be a game that the Bengals go out there and dominate, because I like the matchup of T. Higgins and Jamar Chase versus the Philadelphia Eagles defense. I think when you have a quarterback who can really light the Eagles up and throw, a la what Baker Mayfield was able to do to them this season, like Daniel Jones is someone who only throws screens. So when we have Burrow in this game, I think they'll be able to get it done. And then the Eagles' pass rush isn't the greatest in the league. It's fine at times. So I think that will also help Joe Burrow, give him more opportunities to get the ball out, because he did just face two of the best pass rushers in the league in back-to-back weeks in Miles Garrett and Brian Burns. And that's really been the way to get to Cincinnati. So I think this is just a better matchup for Cincinnati, especially being at home. So I think this is the game they know they need to win and end up getting it done. Huge game for Jamar Chase, because he's kind of been simmering over the past few games. It's kind of been mostly T. Higgins over the past few weeks, so I think he's due for a breakout.
I think so too. Let's stay in the AFC North. We have a great game ahead of us. Not a game that will be fun to watch necessarily, but we have the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Cleveland Browns, but not just the Cleveland Browns. Jameis Winston Browns. Jameis
Let's
Winston
go.
Browns. We've been waiting to see since week one. And obviously, Baltimore's favored at 8.5 and over under of 44.5. I think Baltimore can score 44.5 points. That's for sure. But Jameis Winston, this is where I'm excited because we all know who's going to win this game. This isn't an exciting game to break down, really, but Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, that's enough for me. But Jameis Winston, if Will Levis is banged up and we can't see Will Levis, we get to see a better version of Will Levis. We get to see Jameis Winston, Mr. 30 for 30, Mr. 5,000 yards, Mr. will throw 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions all in one game. Cleveland's offense, I think, should look a little better than it has with Deshaun Watson, mostly because I think a dead corpse could probably make it look a little better. But you get the enigmatic, charming, hilariously fun guy to watch in Jameis Winston. I think Cleveland can put up 20 points in this game. I think you could see a big game from Cedric Tillman and Jerry Judy potentially. So this will be fun. Definitely taking the over in this game. Ravens defense has been not quite to the standard as they were last year. Plus, the Ravens alone will probably score 40 points alone. So I hammer the over here. Ravens cover the spread, and I think we have a fun game to watch on the other side.
You don't think we get like a first week starting luck, like where Jameis comes out and upsets the Ravens after back-to-back weeks games? Because like the Ravens have wagon teams so hard back-to-back weeks, when they beat the Commanders, and then what they did to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming off of that on a Monday night, and now the Browns quietly are being written off. Deshaun Watson's hurt. You don't think Jameis Winston can go out there and just catch them by surprise, where the Ravens have struggled versus Cleveland over the past 2 years, and you kind of just have the stench of the Deshaun Watson situation out of the way here, where last year they blew like a 28-7 lead versus Cleveland at home.
That's true. That is possible. I think the 8.5 could be a kind of a trick, but at the same time, I just feel like that 1-2 tandem with Lamar and Derek. I don't see the Ravens or anybody. I don't think I could see the Browns stopping them whatsoever, just because of how hard it is to stop either one of those guys. But last time we saw Jameis start, um, you could expect about 60% completion. You'll see some interceptions. You'll see some touchdowns. I think it might be closer than people think, but I still think that 8.5 is pretty locked in there.
8.5. Yeah. Yeah, I think the Ravens should win, but I don't know. I think we could get a surprise from Jameis Winston. And, you know, sometimes backup quarterbacks are good for like the first 2 weeks, a la like Andy Dalton, who came out and beat the Raiders, played out of his mind, just gives the team a whole new energy, and then it kind of wears off a little bit once you come back down to earth and realize, like, okay, yeah, still is Jameis Winston playing quarterback.
So are you going to take the? You think Cleveland can cover the spread of 8.5?
I think so.
Okay, 8.5.
I think so
I hope so.
because like Washington, like they ended up making it a one-score game. I don't think the Ravens are gonna go out there like usually AFC North teams don't just go out there and wagon each other. Like it's never usually a massive blowout. Usually all of those games are close.
Yeah. Well, if you're in Cleveland, $15 tickets to see Cleveland Browns Jameis Winston. I feel like that's
Really?
worth it all day of the year. That's one.
That's it
That's
to see the Ravens?
see Ravens in Cleveland for $15. Now, is that a sentiment to how bad the Browns have been, or is that a sentiment to just I don't know? $15 is pretty cheap. That's for some people that's 1 hour of pay, so
I
not
mean,
bad.
Cleveland's pretty small, so
I'd see him for $15. Are you kidding me? This would be a great game to watch. Plus, you get to
yeah.
see Jameis.
And Lamar and Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I'm here for it. But you take them covering. I'm going to take the Ravens to cover the spread, but this will be fun to watch. Then we have the beloved Lions. They are the biggest favorites of the week at -11, over under 44.5 against Mason Rudolph led Tennessee Titans. Maybe Will Levis, but most likely Mason Rudolph.
11 points, 11 and a half.
11. And it looks like Will Levis is still banged up with his right shoulder, so we could see a Mason Rudolph sighting yet again. Lucky us, I guess. I mean, what is there to say? Detroit. I mean, I'm not going to go through this game too heavily. I think
Yeah.
the Lions have consistently scored 30 points a game. They have the highest flying offense in the league. Jameer Gibbs. Worried about David Montgomery being out, but I think they'll be just fine with Jameer Gibbs and Craig Reynolds. So I'll
Yeah,
take the Lions to take care of business.
Titans have consistently scored like 10 to 14 points a game. So, yeah, I think that math adds up. And that 11 points, like, it is a huge spread, but I would take it for sure. With this Detroit Lions team going up against the Titans, it'll really be hard to get motivated to play the Titans. So, hopefully, this isn't a game where they're playing with their food for a bit, but I don't think it will be.
Yeah, I think they should be good. Then we go to the Cardinals Miami Dolphins game. This is a 3.5 point spread for the Dolphins. Dolphins are favored at home with the over under of 45.5. And we could see Tua return in this game. He was practicing this week. Maybe we see the return of Tua. But right now, Dolphins are favored by 3.5 points at home against the Cardinals, who just upset the Chargers in heartbreaking, typical Chargers fashion. Thoughts on this game?
Wow. I mean, what a game we have here. The Dolphins without a quarterback still now who just lost 16 to 10 to the Colts. Their only win, two wins have been versus the Patriots and the Jaguars who struggled in September and hadn't found their rhythm yet. I mean, the Cardinals went out there, beat the Chargers who have played decent. So I think the Cardinals should win this game, but I think this is going to be exactly the same as Colts and Dolphins went with the Cardinals and Dolphins. Like, just going to be an ugly 16 to 10 game. Maybe the Cardinals offense shows some life, but unless Tua grows a foot, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I just think you have all this talent on the Cardinal side, like offensively, but Marvin Harrison hasn't been meshing. Trey McBride's been decent for them, but overall, this shouldn't be a pretty game overall. 45.5. I wouldn't touch the over under. I feel like that's just about right. I'd see the Cardinals winning like 18 to 10, maybe 18 to
Yeah.
14. I don't know. Something ugly.
Yeah. And the thing, too, is like, I feel like everyone just like anointed Marvin Harrison Jr., this like wide receiver god already when he entered the league, but like a receiver can also be a bust sometimes. I'm not saying he is, but sometimes he's not as good as you think. But people are already like, yeah, there's no reason he shouldn't be a top 10 receiver in the league this year. Where you look at Brandon Marshall, he's someone who like consistently ate in Chicago. DeAndre Hopkins still got it done when he had bad quarterback play. It's like at some point, it's not just Kyler Murray's fault. Like you have to also look at Marvin Harrison Jr. Even if he's open and Kyler's missing some throws, like we can't just be like, oh yeah, he's a rookie and he's automatically good. Like he still has to prove it for at least a year or two that he's the one of the best receivers in the league, and he just hasn't been on the same tier as the Jamar Chases, Tyreek Hills, AJ Browns in the league. He's not that difference maker yet.
No, I also think that at this point, we're seeing Malik Neighbors be a lot more effective to start his career so far, with the Giants basically being their offense.
With
Plus,
Daniel
I mean,
Jones,
like,
like
yeah, with Daniel Jones. Plus, even Brian Thomas has been really good for the Jaguars. Keon Coleman has been pretty good for the Bills as well. Lad McConkey. So I feel like Marvin Harrison, the fact that he has his name attached to his dad, Hall of Famer, one of the best wide receivers of all time, like he's going to have the world on his shoulders quite a bit. I think he'll be fine. I still think he has the tools in his wheelhouse. I just think it might take some time for him to be the guy that we think he's going to be.
love how we're always just quietly slipping in Lad McConkey there. He had like one good game, and suddenly it's like, oh yeah, he's like there with Malik Neighbors. Like, yeah, he is a guy who is drafted. You're correct.
He's been he's been good. He's been fine
He's
for
been
them.
okay. I've had him
He's
on my
got better
team, and I'm
numbers
watching him
than
every
he's
week.
got better numbers than Marvin
He's got
Harrison so
better
far.
numbers than Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yep. Pretty well, they're pretty similar actually. 24 catches, 265 for Lad, 20 catches for 300 yards for Marvin. I
Okay,
feel like that's
so yeah, only 40 yards difference. Yeah,
yeah,
it's not that
touchdowns are
bad.
pretty similar. Not bad, but yeah, Cardinals should win this game. If they don't, you're still the Cardinals, so it doesn't matter.
It does not matter.
And then we have a AFC East matchup. We have the Jets, who have fallen to 2-5 after the acquisition of Devontae Adams. They take on the Patriots, who Gerard Mayo has since called soft. Jets are favored by a touchdown at 40.5 at home in Gillette Stadium. Um, early thoughts. Well, Drake May has played pretty well through his first two games. Gerard Mayo has called his team soft, so the defense, we'll see how they respond to that. But Jets are in a period of desperation, falling to 2-5 despite their Super Bowl aspirations. So in this game, do you see the Jets turning things around and starting to get into rhythm, or the Patriots, who over the last 15 years have owned them? I know they won the last time around. See the Patriots squeaking out a surprise win here, or the Jets getting back into rhythm.
I mean, even if the Jets beat the Patriots, I don't think that qualifies as turning things around. You know why? Because you just beat the Patriots. Like, no, it's not turning things around if you go out there and beat a team that's falling apart and just got back from London, who didn't even get a bye between games here, and now they're jet lagged. And you're coming off one of the most embarrassing losses of your season outside of losing to Denver. Like, no, it's not turning things around. It's what you should do, and it is your duty as the New England, as the New York Jets right now, to go out there and beat the New England Patriots. This is no, oh yeah, let's get in a rhythm here against a bad team. It's like, no, time to play catch up. You've been messing around for too long. So it's time to pull it together. And if you don't go out there and beat this team by 20 points, like that's a red flag for me. You need a, it can't be like Thursday night, where Thursday night football, looking back on that, it's like you only scored 24 points. Like, we need to see this offense break out and actually click where you can go out there and score 30, because you're going to have to do that at some point in the playoffs. This defense is not a Carolina Panthers defense. It's not a Denver Broncos defense that dragged Peyton Manning to the Super Bowl. And it's not even a Tampa Bay Buccaneers like Super Bowl quality defense. Like, your defense was really good for a little bit under Robert Saleh, but this isn't the same defense from last year. And teams have been able to move the ball against them. And now your offense actually has to step up and show you can score points. Like, this is Aaron Rodgers now. This isn't, oh, yeah, we should beat the Patriots. It's like, no, you have to at this point in your season, or your season is over if you lose this game. There's no, oh, we're
Yeah,
going to run the table. Like, you're 41. Run a what table?
yeah, I agree. I think you fall to 2-6, like you might as well just start selling. Trade Devontae already. Get rid of some of these other guys and just give up. Your team's done. Just get Devontae out of here. Put him somewhere else, I guess. But I just think this is a game they have to win. 7 point spread. You should cover that. Over under, you should cover. Like, this is a game the Jets have no excuse losing, especially with the Patriots and how anemic their offense has been. I know Drake May's played relatively well, but it's still no excuse at a 1 o'clock game, even if it's in Gillette.
Yeah, no, you have to win. I mean, Miami beat the Patriots in Gillette. Like, my God.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about a better game. This is a game that should be interesting here. NFC South matchup here. We got the rematch of one of the best Thursday night games over this past month. We have Falcons in Tampa. This time it is at Raymond James Stadium, and the Falcons are favored at 2.5. In the game against the Ravens, Tampa did lose Chris Godwin and potentially Mike Evans, so they might not be playing in this game. Um, Falcons did win in overtime this past time. Do you think this is a series that could be split where the Bucks rebound, or you think the Falcons continue their momentum?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a tough series to split here, especially when Mike Evans is probably not going to be back until your week 11 bye now with a hamstring injury. So he's going to miss some time. Chris Godwin is out. So now it's very one dimensional where you have to run the football to win, and your offense is going to be easier to stop. And pretty much the Falcons, if they win this game, they're on cruise control the rest of the season for this division. Um, they know they're probably not going to be the best team in the league, so they're probably going to end up being the third seed if they win this game, third or fourth seed. But they know they're not going to be one of the teams vying for a bye here. So I think you go all out in this game and you can win. Where the Tampa Bay offense has to really scrap it together after losing two of your best players, your two best receivers, literally on offense. So now what are we going to get from K Dot and Trey Palmer? Is that enough against this Falcons team this year? Like, I think they smell blood in the water, and this is a game where they need to go out there and get it done. Now, do I think it can be closer? Yeah, because the Falcons did kind of mull around versus the Seattle Seahawks, but I think they have a bounce back game. Defense steps up, and they can definitely go out there and get it done versus Tampa because I felt like they really start to find their groove in that Tampa Bay game and get a rhythm on offense. And that's when Kirk Cousins went unconscious. So I just think it's also a good matchup for him because Tampa's secondary is weaker this year without Carlton Davis. It's not the same secondary as last year. So I think it is a favorable matchup for the Falcons without the two best receivers.
Yeah, I agree. I think this game will be close. The 2.5 point spread's pretty accurate. I just think when you lose Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in the same game, you lose the way you did, the way the Ravens took care of business against you. I just think that that's a pretty deflating loss right there, even if it is against one of the best teams. And now you're going to be relying on Jalen McMillan, Bucky Irving, and Kate
Hey,
Otten as your weapons. Hey, I'm not making fun of Bucky Irving. We love the gas station here. You're repping half of his name right there. So I mean, no disrespect to Mr. Bucky here, but again, I think the Falcons defense. You got all these talented players like the Matt Judons and AJ Terrells of the world. I think they should be able to take care of business. And if they don't, I feel like they lost a good opportunity to get some good ground in that division.
yeah, absolutely. So I think it'll be a competitive game, but if Tampa pulls this one out, like this will be a really gutsy win. And Baker Mayfield, if he can go ahead and, carry this Buccaneers team without the two best weapons, like that is going to be a huge sign of growth for him. But he has been turning the ball over a lot the past few games where they scored 50 points versus the Saints, sure, but he had three picks. And then he had some more turnovers versus the Ravens. And it seemed like in that Ravens game, he started to try and do a little bit too much, where it seemed like Baker is kind of like in the zone, but then you see like Monday Night Football, he's holding it, starting to hold it for a little too long, heal himself. Or like, feel himself a little bit too much. So I think he needs to kind of go back to square one, rein it in a little bit, get the ball out. We can't afford any turnovers anymore. So I need to see if Baker Mayfield is going to start to play clean football here because now you don't have those explosive plays where Godwin will be able to rip one off for 60 yards or Mike Evans will make a crazy contested catch from 50 yards away in the end zone. It's just not going to
Yeah,
happen anymore.
yeah. Are you worried that he's going to go? We talked about it last year how Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen last year kept trying to play hero ball, and that's kind of what caused those turnovers. We saw Lamar have a lot of had a lot of fumbles, and then Josh Allen had a lot of interceptions. Are you worried that Baker might be going down that same path where, especially with the injuries now, you worry that he might be trying to go into superhero mode? He seemed a little frantic against the Ravens after you saw after you saw Mike Evans get banged up again. I felt like he was trying to play superhero a little bit, and I feel like Baker's just not one of those guys who should do that.
Yeah, he's still he's like better than a system quarterback, but like marginally. Um, and he's not. I don't know if I'd put him in the top 10, but just that image of him like popping the Zin on the sideline, like bro looked like he was down bad in that game. So I am worried a little bit of it, but can you blame him at the end of the day? Like if
No.
he has that like backyard football in him when he doesn't have his weapons. So this is a game that I could see Tampa pulling out and winning just for like heart, like playing for Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. But the Falcons should go in there and take care of business.
Another team that should take care of business. We have the Packers and the Jaguars. Packers are favorited at -4 at Everbank Stadium in Jacksonville, over under of 49.5. If we can bank on anything for the Packers, we're going to see Jordan Love throw for multiple touchdowns and potentially an interception. Those are things you can bank on with the Packers. We saw them pull out a gutsy win against the Texans. Jacksonville, they just beat up on the Patriots in their home country of England. In this game, do you think with what we saw from the Jaguars against the Patriots in London is cause to pause maybe that they can turn things around, or Packers just a wagon?
Again, turning things around versus the Patriots, not really a phrase I would use. And I think the game that would be way more telling to see how this is going to go is what did the Bears do to the Jaguars secondary? That's what Caleb Williams did with the fossilized Keenan Allen. What do you think Jordan Love is going to do versus this Jacksonville Jaguars team? And I mean, the Jaguars have been doing it with Tank Bigsby, but it's still a very specific way they have to win. So I think the Packers are going to be able to go down there and beat Jacksonville because I think it's a really good matchup for Jordan Love versus that secondary. The Patriots just don't have enough to push that issue, but when you have weapons like the Packers do with just kind of all these guys who aren't a number one, but they're all really good twos in Romeo Dobbs, Wicks, and then you have Josh Jacobs coming out of the backfield. Tucker Craft still getting better. He's in year two. He's someone who's still accelerating. Like this is a really good Packers team, and like Jordan Love, I just don't see him going down to Trevor Bank, which is broke at this point. If you try and make a withdrawal from Trevor Bank, you can't because they paid him way too much money to throw for 193 yards and one touchdown a game. So I think Jordan Love goes down there, gets it done. This is going to be a lot more like the Bears Jaguars game than the Patriots.
I agree. I think this could be a game where we finally see Jordan Love not throw in. Right now, he's thrown multiple touchdowns and a pick in every game. I think this could be the game where he doesn't throw an interception. Maybe they lean on Josh Jacobs a little bit. He has a good game, and the receivers get it done. Plus, I think they can mitigate that Jags offense. There is rumors around the mill that potentially Christian Kirk could be dealt potentially. So we might see him play his last game in Jacksonville potentially.
Interesting. Who wants Christian Kirk?
He's a nice addition. We'll see where he goes. I see him going to the Patriots. That'd be funny.
Yeah, I could see
That's
that.
Tell me that's not
That actually
Patriots.
makes a lot of sense.
That's Patriots coded. But if we stay in the AFC South, the last of the 1 o'clock games, we have the Colts versus the Texans in Houston. Get these games as cheap as $73 if you're in the Houston area. Texans are favorited at -5, over under of 45.5. Colts edge out a win against the measly Miami Dolphins, and the Texans lost a heartbreaker against Brandon McManus and the Packers. Do you see this being close because it's a divisional game, or rocking with the Texans here?
Yeah, I see this being close because it's a divisional game. The Colts and Texans have been pretty close the past few times they've played. I mean, that was the best the Colts probably played with Anthony Richardson was the first game in Indianapolis, and then in Houston last year, the Colts absolutely dominated the Texans. So I think in this game without Jonathan Taylor, though, you just don't have that extra boost. You don't have that explosive playmaker, and now Anthony Richardson is looking to run way too much, and I think that matchup falls perfectly for the Colts. But I think the Colts defense can do enough to keep it close with CJ Stroud because Nico Collins has been missed for this team and he's been their explosive dynamic playmaker and we have not seen anyone else step up and CJ Stroud only had 86 yards last week, so I just don't have a ton of confidence right now that this Texans team is going to be able to absolutely blow out the Colts at this point. Especially like you look at that Jaguars game, like that was still like 24-21, fairly competitive throughout the game. So do I think the Colts then can do that and make it a similar type of 24-21 game? Yes, I do. And this is like one of the only teams to beat the Steelers this year, who have also been 5-2, played really well all season.
Yeah, I think this is that 5 point spread. Maybe you take the Colts to cover there. They always play historically close. I'm not overly in love with what I've seen from Anthony Richardson this year. I definitely think that he's regressed a little bit. Um, Maybe a lower scoring game. I'll take the Texans to win. I'll say 20-17. Um, but Texans pull it out. They move to, I believe they'll be 6-2 after this game, looking like one of the best. Then we go to the 4 o'clock slates, and this is when we get a game, if this is what we want to call it. We have the New Orleans substitutes taking on the LA Chargers. Chargers are favorited at -7, over under of 40.5. New Orleans Saints at this point, they're holding tryouts for wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, offensive linemen, basically whoever can fit on an NFL roster. At this point, they're rocking with Spencer Radler. Chargers, they just lost in heartbreaking fashion. Surprise, surprise. Chargers at -7. This is a game that I can't confidently pick either team because the Chargers couldn't beat the Cardinals, and I don't see the Chargers scoring more than 20 points. But the Saints at the same time, I mean, backup quarterback, backup running back, backup wide receivers, offensive linemen, defensive players, like this whole team is just second strings. Can I pick either team in this game? I feel like this is a game that maybe I use one of my ties because I know you like using ties. I might use a tie in this game. This could be a 16-16 game. And then I see our friend that we showed on the show yesterday. This is the game that you see him just, why did we tie with the Saints sort of video.
Yeah, why did we tie with the Saints? I mean, I don't know. I feel like I can confidently pick the Chargers in this game, and I feel like there is a difference, I guess, between the Cardinals and the Saints. Cardinals have won versus the 49ers, albeit without a kicker, but you came back in that game. They beat the Rams so far, so they played well, and um, I think with the Chargers, they can run the ball well enough with J.K. Dobbins. If the Broncos can do it, God damn it, we can do it too. They went out there. They've also beaten the Broncos. So if we're looking at it kind of like as a strength of schedule angle, I do think that the Chargers have done enough this season to confidently beat the Saints, where the Saints right now are in complete free fall. Where if we have another few bad games in a row, unless Dennis Allen has dirt on the New Orleans Saints organization, I think he should be gone at this point. So I think we are in a situation right now where the Chargers have to beat the Saints right now. And if you don't, they need to have a long meeting for that team because that would be unacceptable losing to the New Orleans Saints at this point where like Spencer Rattler doesn't even know what's going on right now. It's like, what are we doing at the end? You only scored 10 points like the Broncos destroyed you at home.
Yeah, it was not a pretty sight to see. I'd like to think the Chargers could win this game, but they always seem to find a way with these sort of games. So that's why I can't pick them because historically they just love breaking the hearts of their fans. But let's move on to the Buffalo and Seattle game. We have Buffalo favored at a field goal with a spread of 46.5. This is in Seattle. Early spread says a field goal for Buffalo. How do you feel about this game going into it?
It's a weird one. But I think with Seattle, they've been pretty hot and cold this season. You start out 3-0, then you lose three straight, and then you go out there, beat the Atlanta Falcons, and now you're at home facing the Buffalo Bills. I think this is a game you potentially win if you have DK Metcalf, but I just don't think without DK their offense has enough firepower to go out there and compete with the Bills right now. I think it'll be close for a little bit, but I could see this being a Bills game where it's 31 to like 24, where the Bills are pretty much in control the whole game. I mean, Amari Cooper didn't know what route he was running last week and still was going out there, putting up yards, got some numbers, got into the end zone last week for the Buffalo Bills. So I just think this is a game where Josh Allen is just better than Geno Smith, and without DK Metcalf, you have Jackson Smith and Jigba. Then it's like Tyler Lockett, Will Disley. Your running game hasn't been super consistent here, but I mean, if Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, if it can be like the Charbonnet and Walker show for Seattle, I think you definitely have a chance to beat Buffalo. But I just can't see it with that DK.
Yeah, and I feel like their defense is pretty hot and cold too. Where some weeks they can really shut it down. I just think in this game, Buffalo, I trust Amari Cooper, I trust James Cook, I trust Dalton Kincaid, and I trust Josh Allen in this. So I'll take Buffalo to win. I do think they cover that spread. I think they can put up some points. I'll say like 27-17 is a good spread for this game. I think DK being gone is going to hurt, but see players like maybe Jake Bobo step up, Jackson Smith and Jigba steps up a little bit closer than we think, but I do think that Buffalo ultimately wins and covers.
Yeah, it should be. And I definitely give Seattle like a 40% chance of winning this game.
Yeah, should be competitive. And this next game, we got Carolina taking on Denver. Denver is covered
Oh,
at -10 in this game, over under a 41.5. Bo Nix, you like that? Well,
the second
Carolina,
biggest spread.
second biggest spread, one of the biggest spreads of the week. I don't know if I love the Broncos at -10, but I also don't know if Carolina scores many points in this game either. So I'll take Carolina to cover, but this is going to be like a 17-9 kind of game. We're going to see a big game from Eddie Pinheiro in this game because that's really all we're going to see. Broncos defense has been stellar so far. Bo Nix and Javonte Williams have gotten it done. But again, I don't think this Broncos team is like a high flying offense. And I think I could see a chance where we're going to have a lot of money on Denver in the money line and the spread. And I feel like you could see Carolina see like a 17-9 kind of game. Not a very pretty game, but maybe Carolina covers. Maybe I'm just trying to speak it into existence because that 10 spread just seems kind of high for Denver. I don't know if Denver deserves a 10-point spread necessarily.
I think they do because they're playing Carolina with extra time to prepare. I mean, you get that mini bye off of Thursday night football here, and then you go out there and you just drop 30 versus the Saints in the Superdome. It is Sean Payton's homecoming there, and then you're taking on a Carolina Panthers team where your defense, I feel like, could cover the 10-point spread alone, where they've been able to play well in spots this season, and I think they dominate weaker offenses. So I think like who is Pat Sertan supposed to cover exactly in this game? Like Adam Thielen, Deontay Johnson, and the Panthers simply can't score more than twice. And I think the Broncos can definitely get over 20. So even if it's 21-10, I see the Broncos covering in this game, and they should go out there and dominate. And if they can, that's two consistent back-to-back wins versus a bad team. So I feel like versus the Panthers, like this spread should probably be like 14 points, but since it is the Broncos, that's why it's only 10. I think is a good way to look at it. Because if it was
Here's a
anyone else, if it was the Lions, it would have been like a 20-point spread.
here's the real question. Over under for Bryce Young's passing. 0. Do you see him coming into the game at all, throwing any forward passes? Because last game, 2 passes for -4. You think he can surpass over 0 yards, or do you think he stays on his trajectory of continuously ticking down his passing yards this season?
I think he keeps ticking down. I can't see
Keeps
him
ticking.
having a forward pass in this game. Like for Bryce Young? No, no way.
Well,
Like
he
the
almost had
Panthers
he had
defense is so bad.
he did have a 300-yard season at one point. Now we're looking at 299, itching closer to that 300-yard season. So hopefully he
We
moves a
may be
forward
at two.
pass.
We may be at 290 by the end of this game.
Woof. Well, we have another 1 o'clock game, 4 o'clock game here. We have Kansas City taking on Vegas. Kansas City favored it at 10. The premier potentially of DeAndre Hopkins, who we talked about at the beginning of the show, over under 41.5. DeAndre Hopkins, premier, Kansas City, 6-0, only undefeated team remaining. And then there's Vegas, who has lost how many games in a row? 4 games in a row. losing to teams like the Broncos, the Steelers, the Rams, the Panthers, the Chargers. Do you have any hope that the Raiders can make it a game, or are you well aware that DeAndre Hopkins should give this Chiefs team a second gear?
Yeah, I mean, make it a game. How? Like, we're talking about the Raiders versus the Chiefs, and I get Aiden O'Connell. This was the last team to actually beat the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas of last year, but I just don't see it at this point, especially going up against that Kansas City Chiefs defense. They're like, no run game. You have no play action here. No Devonte Adams on the field. We only have to stop Brock Bowers, and then we're probably going to turn the ball over 4 times versus the Raiders. Like, this is a team that beat us last season where they didn't even complete a pass in the second half. I think the Chiefs want to get that back this year and get some revenge for what the Raiders did on them last year. So I see the Chiefs coming out there, making sure that they put the Raiders away in this game because the last time they played was embarrassing for the Chiefs. And the Raiders this season, like, we're just on a free fall here. Like, when is it going to stop? Like, when is the elevator going to stop going down? Because it's pretty much as low as it could go for this team, but we don't know how many basements this building has. So, like, the floor keeps getting deeper for the Raiders at this point.
Yeah, it's hard for me to have any optimism with this Raiders team. You could also see potentially Jacoby Myers dealt at the deadline as well. So they're just selling. This is giving their team the incentive that they are not going to win it all this year. Max Crosby could also be dealt potentially by this game. So a lot of movement potentially for some Raider stars. So can't bank on them beating the Chiefs here. Then we go to our last 4 o'clock slate, which is Chicago versus Washington. Jaden Daniels should be back in this game. We'll see the battle of the 1 and 2 picks, respectively. We have Chicago coming off of a bye. They're favored by a field goal with the spread of 43.5.
In Chicago,
This is in Washington.
in Washington, this is a really tough game. And I think the Commanders have been really good this season, and their offense has been dominant. And I think their run game could be the difference in this one. But I just think overall, right now, I just think Chicago is a better team than Washington. And people were excited about Jaden Daniels, and Jaden Daniels has played really well. And people wrote off Caleb Williams way too fast here. They're coming off a great win and a bye, and the Commanders just played a great game versus Carolina. But I think Caleb Williams is ready for this game, and this will be his actual coming out party, submitting himself as a quarterback on a trajectory to be where we thought he could be. And it seems like Keenan Allen was that safety blanket guy for him. And now that their offense is at full strength with the bye to get fully healthy, D Swift has come alive. And I just think the Bears defense is what's going to make the difference versus the Washington Commanders, because the Commanders defense has been fine, but you know, when they beat the Bengals, no one punted in that game. It's not like their defense stepped up and played well. And then the Panthers or the Ravens, when they played them, like, they still were able to score whenever they wanted to and needed to in that game. So I think that the Bears will be able to go out, get it done. Great showdown, but I just like Chicago better at this point. I think they're a better overall team and have some more continuity.
Yeah, I think this is a game where I would hammer the over, honestly, because we have a high flying offense with the Commanders. We have a Bears team that's starting to click. So if you're going to bet on this game, I would look at over under in this game. Who wins this game? I think ultimately Chicago has the better defense. So I'd give them the edge. I feel like offensively, with how the Bears have started to mesh with all of their pieces, I'd still think I'd probably put them on an even playing field there. But I'll take Chicago to get a few stops in here. Watch as Jaden Daniels has to punt every once in a while. So give me Chicago. I would hammer the over and have the Chicago Bears on a 3-game winning streak or 4-game winning streak. I'm sorry. Taking care of business. Then we have the Cowboys and 49ers game. Sunday night football. If you're wondering what happened the last time the Cowboys and 49ers faced off, well, October of last year, almost one full year ago, 49ers 42-10. Micah Parsons came out after the game and said, "You didn't get our best." after that game. So right now, San Francisco, who has a million injuries, whether it's Brendan Ayuk out for the season, whether it's Debo Samuel with pneumonia, Christian McCaffrey potentially needing amputation on his legs, whatever it might be, Brock Purdy regressing slightly. San Francisco favored it at 4 at home, over under of 45 and a half. With that bye week for the Cowboys, do you have faith that the Cowboys can get a win against the banged up 49ers?
I think so. I think this is a game that the Cowboys finally go out there and beat the 49ers. It seems like the Niners are falling apart a little bit, and Dak Prescott has had some terrible turnovers here. But I think with the Cowboys, they also do randomly play some good games. And the fact that the 49ers have a losing record, like, it's not so intimidating anymore. And now you don't have Christian McCaffrey there. Ayuk is out for the season. We'll see what the update is with Debo Samuel. He has pneumonia. Jawan Jennings is also dealing with a hip injury here. So I think that CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott can finally get it done versus the 49ers. The 49ers have played some tough games back to back to back here. So I don't think they're the same juggernaut that's going to go out there and just wipe out the Dallas Cowboys in this game. Now, I could see them getting up in this game, but I think this could be a game that Dak Prescott actually comes back. Where if you look at that Steelers game, you look at the Giants game, I think it's going to be very similar to both of those, where both teams' offenses are struggling at this point and struggle to score. But Dak did come back. You have to give him a little bit of credit for that Sunday night football game. And CeeDee Lamb, I think, will be able to put in work versus this defense. Rico Dordal has been good enough for this team, so I just think the Niners just aren't it this season. And I will actually pick the Cowboys versus the 49ers, as crazy as that sounds.
It does sound crazy. I am going to pick the Niners in this game. I understand the Niners are banged up, but I just think that the Cowboys just feel like they're in disarray. And I understand that the Niners are the same. They got a million injuries with everybody we mentioned here. I just feel like when it comes to this game, this is such a fierce rivalry that this is a game that the Niners game they wake up and they're going to want to face them. We have Nick Bosa who could be coming back here as well. Um, I just think they're going to be awake and they're going to want to take care of business against this Cowboys team. They should be able to stop the run against Rico Doidle. Really, it comes down to what can Diamador Lenore do against CeeDee Lamb? Can they contain them enough? This will be a lower scoring game. I think that 45 and a half, I'd probably hammer the under in this game, but I will take the San Francisco 49ers to win this game. I don't know if I would touch that spread of -4, but I do think San Francisco can pull it out. Maybe we see like a 16-13 type game, 20-17. You get the idea, but I will pick San Francisco just because I feel like they have some momentum against the Cowboys, and I feel like they're kind of in the Cowboys' heads a little bit, especially with what we saw last year with Micah Parsons on his podcast.
Yeah, you could be right. I just like Dak and CeeDee Lamb the best out of any like combination in this game. And then just the Niners, like it does seem like they're also falling into disarray after that loss versus the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think both teams are in disarray, but they just happen to face each other at the same time. Now, whoever wins this game, maybe they turn things around, maybe they don't, but I'll take San Francisco to take the slight edge. Then we have the Monday night game. This will be fireworks shortly. We have New York Giants taking on the Russell Wilson led Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers are favored by 6.5 with the over under the lowest of the week, surprise, surprise, at 36.5. Based on the spread, based on everything else, I know who you're going to pick in this game, but how do you feel about those lines and over unders, respectively?
Yeah, I think I feel like that's fairly fair for both of those teams, especially coming out on a Monday night. I mean, Monday night footballs are a little have been a little bit out of whack this season where we've seen some pretty crazy games, and I think this has been the best Monday night football like slate of games that we've had in a long time. Especially coming into week 8, but like the Giants and the Steelers, it's a situation now where the Giants fully fall apart versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And now you're stepping into a prime time matchup where Brian Dayball is pretty much losing his mind right now with the Giants. Like, how much worse can it get? We can't run the football anymore. We really don't have an offense anymore. So I just think the Steelers are going to go out there and eat the Giants alive. I mean, minus 6.5 points. I feel like the Steelers could cover the over under of 36.5 on their own in this game versus the Giants. And I think this will be a game where the Giants finally get buried. Daniel Jones is probably going to get benched in this game. I don't even know if he's starting. Like, it doesn't matter if he's starting or not in this game. And then Russell Wilson, like, we'll see if he can continue what he did last week. But I think the Steelers defense on their own is just going to be an absolute demolition versus this Giants team.
Yeah, I think some notable stats in this game to keep in mind. Daniel Jones is 0-7 on Monday Night Football. Here are some of his stats for those who care. We're looking at 8 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, QBR of 72, 31 sacks in 7 games, including in his first game, or I'm sorry, his last Monday night game where he got sacked 10 times against the Seahawks. Those are some notable games to keep in mind with Daniel Jones. So, are we going to bank on the guy who has never won on Monday Night Football, or are we picking the Steelers? I think the Steelers, they're riding high. I really liked what I saw out of Russ. Can he continue his momentum? I think he can. So I will take the Steelers to cover easily. And I might actually take the over in this potentially.
Yeah, I think the Steelers can cover the over on their own.
Well, we have all the games previewed now, but what we haven't talked about yet, we have a new
The
sport that
bye.
is back in the fold. That's right. The NBA came back yesterday. We saw the Knicks and Celtics. Celtics hitting the most threes in a regular season game, 29 threes. Then we also saw the premiere of Bronny James and LeBron Lakers taking on the Timberwolves. So NBA is back in full swing. We have a bunch of games coming out tonight, including Suns and Clippers. We have a few games going on right now. I guess we could talk about the Tuesday games first. Celtics 132 to 109 against the Knicks, looking like an absolute wagon.
Yeah, I mean, they look like they're picking up where they left off, but they're going to be even better this season because I hate to break it to you, Jason Tatum didn't have his first triple double until game one versus the Miami Heat last season. And now it's becoming a trend where Jason Tatum's getting 10 assists every game. And now this game, he was efficient, 14 for 18 in the regular season. Then he unlocked this new aspect of the game where Joe Mazzulla came to him and was like, we need someone who's going to be a distributor on this team, or this team's weakness has been they really haven't had a true point guard. They haven't had a facilitator, and now you're putting the ball in Jason Tatum's hands where he's a facilitator, but it's not in like a James Harden type of way where he's just dribbling the ball the entire time and going into ISO. Like Jason Tatum's making some quicker decisions now, and now his scoring, it seems like he fixed his shot a little bit. In this game, he didn't have the hitch he was dealing with last season, and I think Tatum was also dealing with a wrist injury in the playoffs and like coming into last season. So I think just having that time off, his shot looks better, and then Derek White getting better, and then Joe Mazzulla being potentially an early candidate for one of the best head coaches in the league. He may win coach of the league this year, and I feel like he may have deserved it last year as well. But the way he coached that team in the finals, knows how to push all of the right buttons here, and then Drew Holiday on this team, like you can't say enough about the Boston Celtics, and we haven't had a team go to the finals back to back in a while now. I think really when you look at the NBA landscape, it's like who realistically is competing with this team, because we had people coming into the season saying that the Knicks of all teams were going to compete with the Boston Celtics. So when I talked to at work, was like, "Oh yeah, I actually thought the Knicks were going to win that game." I'm like, "Why? Who on earth is Jalen Brunson gonna guard in this game? Like, it makes no sense." And like Carl Anthony Towns is supposed to guard Jason Tatum at power forward. Like that's not gonna happen. It's just a bad matchup for the Knicks here, and people are hyping this team up way too much. Where like you're putting a lot of faith in a big four of Mikal Bridges, okay, Carl Anthony Towns, Josh Hart, and Jalen Brunson. Like, stop it. This is not a big four.
No, I liked the Knicks a lot better last year, honestly. I think Carl Anthony Towns makes your it makes your front seven a little bit better, but I don't I think losing Hartenstein's a big loss for you. I think DiVincenzo, although he probably was going to go down with the Mikal Bridges trade, I still think that he has a certain type of heart that they're going to miss. So I don't think the Knicks are going to be as good as everyone thinks. I think they'll make the playoffs and maybe they win a playoff round. But when we look at the East alone, like it's pretty much the Bucks or bust. Maybe it's the Heat, but I just don't think the Heat have enough firepower.
No.
Those are the only two teams I can see truly contending with them in the East. And then if you look at the West, like the West is pretty wide open for the most part. I think a lot of people are banking on the Thunder to take that second step. Um, Mavericks maybe as well, but overall, I don't see who else can compete with the Celtics. You have size, you have talent, you have depth, which I think these are all things that most of these teams don't have. So Celtics should be a shoe in for the finals, barring injury.
Yeah, barring injury too. I mean, like Giannis has dealt with injuries over the past few years, so I think the Bucks would give them the biggest challenge here. But I mean, the Celtics have been pretty good versus Milwaukee, and I think they can definitely beat them, especially when Doc Rivers is the head coach, and that's definitely a
Oh
fatal
God, I
flaw
forgot about that.
for that Milwaukee team. Like every team in the East has a fatal flaw. Like the Pacers, like you have a really good coach, but it's still just Halliburton and Siakam. Like you still can't match up with the Celtics at full health with Kristaps Porzingis there. It was a close sweep, as a lot of people say, but like the Celtics still swept you, and I don't think the Pacers are gonna had added enough to really compete with them. And then the 76ers fatal flaw is Joel Embiid can't not get tired in the second round of the playoffs and win more than one round in the playoffs for someone who people anoint as a top 5 player in the league. Like then you have Paul George, who also does not show up in the playoffs anymore and is older with injury issues, has not been the same Paul George recently. I don't think that big three is going to go anywhere. And then the Knicks, like I don't know. Like, can you get to the second round again? Yeah, but I'm still not going to pick you versus Indiana. Still not going to pick you versus Milwaukee or Boston. Chances are you're going to have to go through one of those teams to get to the conference championship. Could you potentially get there? Yeah, but also Carl Anthony Towns, like, he was in a lot of foul trouble last year with the Timberwolves, and they had to compromise for him. And thankfully, Nas Reed stepped up. But like, you're playing for a coach who plays his players 44 minutes a game. Like, I don't think Carl Anthony Towns is even going to be in the game that much. And now you have this beef with DiVincenzo in Minnesota. Like, I just don't think the Knicks like got that much better where they're going to take the next step and get to a conference championship. And people are like putting this team like it's similar to the Jets. Like now we're putting them in the finals because they got Cat. Like no, he's not that type of game changing piece.
Yeah, actually, it's funny enough that you say that. I have the championship odds according to ESPN bets, and the Knicks are the third favorites to win the championship. So you have the Celtics who are plus 300, the Thunder who are plus 650, and then the Knicks are plus 700. They're the third highest championship odds. They're above
Ridiculous.
teams. They're above teams like the Nuggets, above teams like the Mavericks, the Bucks. The list goes on. I think all of those teams are better contenders than the Knicks. So the Knicks are like I get the Knicks are fun, and I liked what I saw from the Knicks last year when they had the Villanueva team. But again, I just think your additions, like you add Mikael Bridges, but you lose a certain type of swagger with DiVincenzo. You add Carl Anthony Towns, but you lose Hartenstein, who's a lot cheaper. And I think he filled a role that I don't know if Carl Anthony Towns can fill quite to the same level. So I don't know. I just don't believe in the Knicks too much. I think second round is what their ceiling ultimately is. And I don't even know. Maybe they don't even make the second round potentially.
Right, Giannis and Dame. If you want to like pick the Knicks over them, you shouldn't be making odds or talking about basketball. It's
The
like it's
Bucks
Giannis
have
and
the
Damian Lillard. If they're healthy, like there's Giannis can beat this team in his sleep without Dame
the eighth highest odds. I feel like that's really low. I understand that
for
they have
sure.
Doc Rivers, which we never loved that hire to begin with, but you still have Dame. You still have a lot of the players from that championship team. You have Dame Lillard, who I think they're hungry. Dame doesn't have many years left. He's 34 this year, but I feel like they're a better fit to beat the Celtics, especially if they can make some moves at the deadline. I don't
Yeah.
know. I feel like eighth is a little low for the Bucks personally.
Yeah, Doc Rivers at least has a ring. Like Tom Thibodeau, like still hasn't done it yet, and his still wears his players down. Where like they just don't have enough depth to play his style coming into this season.
Yeah, we saw them fall apart against the Pacers. But then for the West, right? Teams that stand out to me, right? The Thunder, they added Hartenstein, they added Alex Caruso, they got rid of Josh Giddey. They made some big moves where they were the 1 seed last year. They matched up against the Clippers and Magic. Sorry, Clippers and Mavericks, if I'm not mistaken. And they played all the way up to Game 7. So you think with those additions there that the Thunder should be anointed as the second favorite odds, and potentially winning it, going into this to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Thunder played the Mavericks all the way up until Game 6, gave them the toughest run for their money outside the Clippers, really. So the fact that they almost did it and took some incredible heroics from Kyrie, it's like I think this Mavericks team is good, but I think just with Chet getting a year better, Jalen Williams getting a year better, and then adding someone like a Hartenstein who has that playoff experience, can play center alongside Chet here and come off your bench and play really quality minutes on defense. He can bang there and neutralize someone like a that the someone like a Blake Lively that the Dallas Mavericks had, where they had their two centers jumping out of the gym. Like I think Hartenstein is gonna be the guy who neutralizes them. SGA continuing to get better, so like this is still a very young team, and the fact that you added Caruso, who makes championship plays, like I actually really like this Thunder team to make the finals this year, and I think it just makes sense when you look at the Mavericks. Like you have Clay Thompson, but you really need some help defensively on the perimeter, and I just don't see where you're going to get that from Clay Thompson and what Clay Thompson is even going to show up. Is it going to be a Clay Thompson who goes over in a closeout game, or are we going to see a solid Clay Thompson who has accepted his role as a bench player in the series and can give you a solid 15 to 18 points a game? And then how long is Kyrie going to keep up this momentum with the Dallas Mavericks? Like, we haven't seen him play this well in a row for a while since Cleveland here. So like Kyrie Irving being available is not the norm. And then the Nuggets for me just don't have enough shooting to get it done. I mean, you lose KCP and then you pretty much don't have anyone outside of your starting five last season that can make a difference. You had one of the worst benches, which ended up costing you in the playoffs last year, and your solution was Russell Westbrook. Not a
Mm.
huge believer in that. And I also think that the Timberwolves just got worse this year. Like, how much longer is Mike Conley going to keep doing this? You replaced Carl Anthony Towns with the worst shooter in NBA history in Julius Randle. You still have Rudy Gobert on that team. You're saying you want to do this to elevate Anthony Edwards, but it's like by making your team worse, you're giving him the keys and clogging the paint where you don't have any centers who can shoot. You're going to play two non 3 point shooters with Anthony Edwards on the floor. And then it's Mike Conley Jr. here. It's like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense for Minnesota this year either. So I think, like, for the Thunder, it just makes sense that it is their time. It just feels right that it would be Oklahoma City and Boston in the finals this year.
Now, one team that is a hard team to read because you look at it, they have talent, they have some decent players on their team. James Harden and then Kawhi Leonard, who has been reported to be out for indefinitely here. The owner, Steve Ballmer, says, "We think we can surprise some folks," says Steve Ballmer, who is opening ground on a new stadium potentially for them, a new arena with the Clippers. This is a team that I feel like a few years ago was bound to be right in the mix, and now it just feels like they've been fading fast. You have some nice players like the Nicholas Batums of the world, and you have the Mo Bambas and PJ Tuckers, players that were nice a few years ago. Um, do you see the Clippers making any noise, especially like with the loss of Kawhi Leonard potentially? It seems like the media is a little split on the Clippers. What do you think about them?
No, not interested. It's the Clippers. Who gives a flying fuck about the Clippers? I mean, my God, how many different iterations of this team do we have to go through? It's like it's Paul George and Kawhi. Kawhi chose the Clippers instead of the Lakers for his legacy here, and now Kawhi's going to be out again. It's like, no, I don't believe Kawhi Leonard is going to be healthy again in the season. And I feel like we're a year or two from him just flat up retiring, or if he's not healthy at the end of it, I could see Kawhi retiring after this year. And then James Harden is nice, but I just don't see this team. Maybe you surprise some people and get into the second round, but that's about it for your ceiling here. So for the Clippers, no, I'm just not interested this season. It's still the Clippers. You lost Paul George, but like Harden, it'll be fun. But without Kawhi Leonard, you may be in a conversation where you might not make the playoffs, and you're going to be fighting for a play-in tournament role. So I think really I would prefer a team like the Pelicans, who got DeJounte Murray on that team. Now with CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram playing better. We saw like Zion Williamson and them play really competitive in the playoffs, and it seems like they could take a step forward. I think DeJounte Murray could be big for that team. So I think a sleeper team would be like the Pelicans, the Clippers, and the Lakers. Like they're just too old. Can we leave them in the past? Can we forget about both of those teams? The Lakers won the championship. The Clippers didn't. Surprise, surprise. But LeBron is too old at this point. Anthony Davis can't stay healthy. Like the Lakers aren't going to be a threat this year. Neither are the Clippers. I'm just not interested.
Yeah, I think I'd rather see. I want to see the Lakers be competitive. Maybe they make the play-in tournament, but at the same time, it's like you have LeBron, you have AD, you have Austin Reeves, but after that, I just don't believe in their depth. Roy Hachimura, Bronny James, it's a nice story, but I really feel like we're seeing the last season of LeBron potentially. I don't know what else he has to play for at this point. His team is not in a place to win a title at this point, especially because we mentioned the Thunder and the Mavericks and the Nuggets, and there are other teams that are up and coming. You're going to be 41. I think LeBron will still play very well, but I just don't believe in the Lakers as a unit to continue moving forward, especially because I feel like they didn't make that many moves in the offseason to really fix their needs at all.
No, definitely not. So I think like the West, it'll be Nuggets, Mavericks, Thunder, and then maybe a surprise team in there. But that's pretty much your three contenders. The Timberwolves might be there in the conference championship, but I do think they got worse. They have less shooting on that team, especially at the forward position. They're definitely a lot less dynamic without Carl Anthony Towns, unless Naz Reid turns into a superhuman again. But I don't know. I don't know if Naz Reid is really going to be the answer there for getting rid of Carl Anthony Towns. And then Embiid has said might not ever play a back to back again in his career.
That's pathetic. What are you talking about? Come on,
Yeah.
dude. I just he's one of those players. He's kind of like I don't know if this is a fair comparison, but he's kind of like an Aaron Rodgers figure for me where he just says shit that just rubs me the wrong way. And like not playing a back to back, I just feel like he's saying fuck you to the Sixers, a team that could really use him. You have Paul George with you now. You're in a title window. Why aren't you doing a back to back? I understand that your body gets banged up and you have a lot of injuries, but come on, dude. I don't
Yeah.
know. I feel like that's
Especially
bullshit.
for Embiid. Kevin Garnett was like, it's literally your job, bro. And you can't last 82 games. Like, you don't want to be like the Boomers. Like, they need to play every game. Like, it's fine to take a rest day here, but like, people can't just go to their job and be like, I can't come into work back to back days. Imagine. It's like, no, I get worn out by talking to people and being on the phones. Like, for my mental health, like, I can't work back to back days. Like, sorry, I just can't do that. And you're going to still pay me my full salary, anyways, like, when I'm healthy. Like, come on. And it's just a testament to, like, Embiid doesn't play that many games in a row, and he's still getting hurt and tired in the second rounds. Like, maybe, like, I don't know if he needs to look into a new trainer, diet, conditioning, what have you, or he's just one of those players. He's just never going to get past the second round. Like, this is just another kind of slap in the face, and he's already 30. Like, he's
Yeah.
already really old. Like, people think Embiid's still, like, entering his prime. Like, he might only have 3 years left, realistically.
I mean, his first 3 seasons, he was out with injury for the most part. People were thinking he was a bust for the first few years because he was dealing with so many injuries, and he's been banged up every year. He's going to make $60 million this year. He just signed a contract for nearly $200 million that'll pay him $65 million annually. Play your back to backs, dude. They're paying you almost $1 million a game to show up and play basketball, a game you love. I feel like that's just a slap in the face to the Sixers. If I was the Sixers, I'd be pretty pissed about that.
Yeah, and it's a slap in the face to the fans too. It's like your job is not hard. It's basketball. Basketball's not physical anymore. It's like it is, but not like hockey is. Like I always laugh when basketball players are like, "Oh, I need to take a rest," when like Just look at hockey players. They play the same amount of games as you. It's a way more physical. What are you talking about? You need a rest day. You have like all the nutrition, access to trainers, and rehab you could possibly need. And, you do bang bodies there, but it is a flop and cardio sport where it's turning into more of a soccer type sport than a hockey type sport.
Yeah, I can agree. Now, looking at the crystal ball here for the NBA, some of the futures bets here. As of right now, entering game one of the season, who do you have as your early pick for MVP?
I would say it has to be Jason Tatum, right? Like, with all the shit that people gave him after the finals, just calling him corny there, and then with the Olympics, Steve Kerr benching him, like, I feel like it just makes sense that Jason Tatum's going to win the finals. And he averaged 26 points last year, but he had averaged like 30 plus points a game the previous 2 seasons. This is a guy who has more playoff points before the age of 27 than Kobe Bryant did. He's someone who scored more playoff points than Kevin Durant so far. And then when you look at Jason Tatum too, it's like when you unlock the assist game and he's going to be the facilitator, I think that'll be the best argument for him to be MVP is he's going to be putting up 26 to 27 points, but he could legitimately average 8 to 9 assists this season as well, especially the style of basketball they're playing. And with what Steve Kerr did for him, I feel like this is probably going to be the best version of Jason Tatum we've ever seen this season, and they're going to have the best record in the NBA. So it's going to be the best player on the best team in a Steph Curry type of fashion, like he did in 2016, 2017.
Yeah, I think Tatum should be the favorite. Other players that I would shout out, just based on the media always kind of pushing that narrative, I could see someone like Luca finally getting one potentially if he plays efficiently, if he's averaging near a triple double, if he steps it up on defense, which he did for the first round of the playoffs last year. Maybe we give it to Luka Doncic potentially. It seems like the media has something out for the Celtics, so that's why I worry about the Celtics players winning an MVP potentially. I don't think it's going to be Joker again. I feel like he's won his MVPs. He's won 3 of the last 4, so I don't know if he would win it again. And I worry that Embiid is not going to be healthy for the required amount. So if it's not him, I feel like it might be Luca this year or maybe SGA because he's in a similar situation with the Celtics where might have the best team, best record in the league. Maybe the SGA finally wins it. Because honestly, I think last year he definitely deserved it.
Yeah, you could argue that, but I think like defensively, Tatum is so much better than both of those players, and his numbers scoring wise are going to be similar where he's probably going to put up 26 to 30 points again. And I think he'll average right around 27, 28 points this year, but I think he's going to average also like 7 rebounds and 9 assists, where he's also going to be averaging a near triple double for his team. Where now that he's the facilitator, it's like he's going to be the most valuable piece, the most valuable player for the Celtics right now. And then the fact that he's a player who's capable of being on an all defensive team playing power point forward now for the Celtics, like I just think it's a perfect year for him to win it. Where it's like with the Olympics, I feel like he has something to prove this season where he's like, all right, everyone's saying Jalen Brown is better, and you can make that argument here. Anthony Edwards is talking crazy here. I have one of the best resumes of someone my age in the NBA, if not the best resume. So I think it's his season where he's going to be just pissed off, where it's like people kind of ignored him. People laughed at the Celtics, and then it's like, oh, you had an easy path to the finals. Steve Kerr, I don't know where I'm going to fit you in the rotation here. Where it's like, okay, when Booker and Anthony Edwards are playing over him and he is better than both of those players at this point in his career, it's like that's where it got pretty disrespectful. Pesley, like you can play Tatum at shooting guard, you can play him at small forward or power forward. It's like you're playing Bam Adebayo over Jason Tatum. Like, no, he was better than plenty of guys on that team to be playing. So I think this is going to be the monster that Team USA created, and the fans who have just been clowning him, calling this guy the most corny player in the league. Like, this guy is not cornier than Joel Embiid. Sorry. He's not cornier than Anthony Edwards. He's not cornier than John Morant. He's not cornier than Draymond Green. He's not
LeBron
cornier than
James.
Jimmy Butler. Yeah,
Got to put LeBron James in there too. I feel like he's pretty fucking
Yeah, he
corny
never
himself.
dressed up in a like a, what was that picture of LeBron where he's in like a butterfly leotard costume? Like
I don't know. I just know LeBron's corny as fuck. I feel like he deserves some shouts too, pops at this point. But yeah,
he
it's gonna
doesn't
be
think the
interesting to
earth
see.
is flat.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I'm excited for it. Um, this week we have, let's see, some of the games that we're going to be shaping up tonight. I know we have Suns and Clippers. That'll be a fun watch. Right now, Pacers are losing to the Pistons. We'll see if that holds up. Um, we have Magic and Heat in a deadlock right now. Bucks and Sixers we're seeing right now. And then later tonight, Grizzlies, Jazz, Warriors, Trailblazers. So it'll be interesting to see how it shapes out.
Yeah, and we probably won't talk about the NBA every week because like it sucks, but the regular season doesn't matter. So unless there's a trade or some drama happening, probably not gonna talk about it too much here. But if there's anything you want us to talk about, feel free to comment below and we can get to it. Or if you want us to go over some other NBA drafts, we can for sure do that in the future here.
Absolutely. So we previewed all the games in the NFL. We talked about all the latest news in the NFL, all the latest news in the NBA, previewed the NBA, talked about our predictions for big awards here. But there's one thing that we have forgotten to do, which will conclude our show today. We talked about the worst top five yesterday and who was on the bulletin board of disappointment. Documents are being unleashed in our very eyes here. Going into week 8, we must know who are the top five juggernauts, top five teams that are on the Mount Rushmore of greatness, according to the Brickyard. Take it away. Top five teams, according to the Brickyard, entering week 8.
Yeah, we have the top five teams coming into week 8, rounding out the positivity, going into the season on a high note in week 8, getting excited about something. And we have a matchup here, and either of these teams could be in the top 5 right now, depending on what happens next week. And honorable shout out to the Washington Commanders. But honestly, right now, I just think that at number 5, the Chicago Bears are currently better than the Washington Commanders. When you look at the Commanders, they've played some tough games where their defense hasn't really been able to hold up in the Ravens game. They just ran into a better team here, and now their offense has played well. You've had some great momentum under Dan Quinn, where even Marcus Mariota was getting in on the action. But with the Chicago Bears, I've liked what I've seen a lot from their defense here, and Caleb Williams has stepped up in the past few weeks where you have Keenan Allen, who's fully healthy now. You have Roma Dunze, who in some games has proven that he is an NFL quality wide receiver. You have the luxury, the most underrated tight end in the league in Cole Kmet, and D Swift actually starting to show up and come alive here, and everything is kind of coming together. I think the Bears are actually a really well-rounded team at this point. And at number 5, I have to put Chicago now. If the Commanders come out there and beat them, could you see them sliding into the top 5? Yeah, the Steelers, could they slide into the top 5 next week? Potentially, but right now, got to stick with the Chicago Bears because of the absolute run that the NFC North is on. And speaking about being on a run and being in the NFC North, I mean, what more can you want? Are you not entertained by our modern day Brett Favre, Ben Roethlisberger, whatever you want to call him, Jordan Love stepping up in this game versus the Green Bay Packers, where we said it's going to come down to whoever had the ball last. And I just thought that I've liked what I've seen from Jordan Love better than CJ Stroud in this game, where he goes out there, gets it done with someone like a Romeo Dobbs, someone like Jaden Reed. He gets it done with Christian Watson, Tucker Kraft showing up huge so far this season, getting better every week. And then Matt LaFleur just coaching this team to the best of his abilities. And it was a dogfight versus Houston. Wanted to see them come back, and then just comes out here with the ball in his hands. Never a doubt for Jordan Love, and goes out there, beats the Texans. The Texans haven't even been in the top 5, which is surprising for me all season here. And Jordan Love and the Packers just go out there, get it done. He's throwing a lot of touchdowns this season, and I don't see any reason why he's going to slow down. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with. So at number 4, I have the Green Bay Packers still in the top 5 according to the Brickyard. And then at number 3, what more can you say about Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens? I mean, he's the back-to-back MVP, threw 5 touchdowns in this game. People thought Mark Andrews was playing a left tackle. No, he's just coming off an Achilles injury. And crazy, when you're an old man, sometimes it takes some time to get the gears going, but he is back in the full force now. 20 fantasy points this week, and we don't judge the game based off of that, but he's going out there getting touchdowns again. Lamar is starting to look for him. He's shaking off the rust a little bit, and he's been great blocking it. Still have Isaiah Likely as a solid piece. We know what Zay Flowers and Derrick Henry are about, but Rashad Bateman, just being that explosive difference maker for this team, is going to decide if this team is going to be a Super Bowl caliber team or not. And I know it's crazy to sound, but I really do think it rides on him. If he's going to come out there and keep making big plays, then you have 4 legitimate dynamic weapons in Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, Derrick Henry, and Lamar Jackson. So if Rashad Bateman can step up, I think this team can legitimately challenge the Chiefs for a Super Bowl this year. At number 2, I mean, you want to talk about another close game where the Vikings are coming off a bye. They have 2 weeks to prepare. The Lions were 4-1 versus them in the past 2 times that they played, but the Lions go out there, blow 2 double-digit leads in this game. Did not matter because ball in his hands at the end of the game. Jared Goff came out and did it, and he's throwing 80% over the past few weeks. He has almost as many incompletions as touchdowns, which is crazy. And then you have Amon Ra who's stepping up. But this offense, it's not even one guy. It's just been an absolute wagon. They have probably the best playbook in football at this point. They're the undisputed number 1 team in the NFC, sitting there at the top, and they're 5-1 now. Knock off the Minnesota Vikings, and they took the Minnesota Vikings' best shot. They just stood there like a good boxer, like, okay, that's what you got, but I'm just going to walk you down, get the punches I need, and then get out of here with the victory, which is exactly what the Detroit Lions did. And they're still staying here at number 2 because this is a team still getting better. This is still a very young team, and Dan Campbell's Lions have gotten better every single year he's been a head coach, and I don't see why they're not going to get better again this year because they look a lot more consistent than they did last season, where you still had some games where you're worried about it, but it feels like this is the best Lions team we have seen so far. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, 150 total yards. What more can you ask from the man? So at number 2, we have the Detroit Lions, and at number 1, pinned at number 1 for the entire season, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, the defense with Spagnuolo is carrying this team. I don't care if people are arguing that Patrick Mahomes is a bottom 10 player. Like, please stop talking about football and reconsider what you're doing with your life. If you think Mahomes is a bottom 10 quarterback in the league, like, no, if any team could swap out their quarterback right now with Patrick Mahomes, they would do that. And that's what matters when it comes to football. It's not your stats where, like, actually this season this player has that. No, sometimes it's as simple that Patrick Mahomes is just a better quarterback than every other quarterback in the league at this moment. He has 3 Super Bowls here, and he's doing this with pretty so talent. He had 2 interceptions, but they won the game, and he knows exactly what he needs to do. They're the only undefeated team in football, and somehow that's a disappointment for some people. People need to stop being reactionary. Sometimes saying the Chiefs have fallen off and they're not still the top contender in the AFC, like, okay, maybe another team can beat them because you're the first person to realize, oh, no one's won a three-peat in Super Bowl. So, like, yeah, it makes sense that you'd pick against the Chiefs, but to say that Mahomes is a bottom 10 quarterback, absolutely ridiculous. And then you come out here and get DeAndre Hopkins. So, at number 1, never a doubt, the Kansas City Chiefs. Unless Mahomes goes down, they are still the team to beat. They're going to be the number 1 seed in the AFC, where they haven't lost any games yet. And even if they do finish as 13-4, I think you have the tiebreaker already versus the Ravens. You have the tiebreaker versus the Bengals. If you can also get it versus the Texans, like, I don't see a reason why the Chiefs won't be hosting the AFC playoffs again here. So, like, road to the Super Bowl goes through Arrowhead. I know a lot of people don't like it, but they are the best team in the league the past 3 years for a reason without Tyreek Hill.
No, Arrowhead Invitational is what they call it. The dynasty of the 2020s. Patrick Mahomes already on path to be, if not already, the baby goat. So great list so far. We got the Lions as well up there. I like the Ravens. They're basic. I mean, you have your top 5, and you have 3 of the NFC North teams. Just talking about how wagon they've been, but we've been covered. We have our top 5 teams according to the Brickyard entering into Week 8. We previewed every game. We talked about the NBA. We talked about the news, and now you know, entering this week, who is the top 5 teams according to the Brickyard.
Yeah, but most importantly,
Stay brick.
stay brick.